Good morning. I'm Amanda Broomhall and I'm the AB in ABCW. Before we begin, a big thank you to the sponsors who've made this conference possible. Your support's been really appreciated. And to the three fabulous organisers, Megan, Rebecca and Lorian, what an amazing job you guys have done. I'd like to start today by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I now introduce you to Cairo Walker, my business partner and co-presenter today, and the CW in ABCW. Cairo.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome from across the ditch, the other part of the bubble, Aotearoa, exemplar country in terms of COVID response and land of the quakes recently. So a big thank you to our organisers and sponsors. We at ABCW have had a fabulous month presenting and also participating in the sessions. I'm a bit sad we're at the last day in May, but I know that there is a fantastic lineup and I am dug in with a cup of tea and going to be sitting in front of my computer watching everything for the day.
Great.
Back to Amanda.
Thank you very much, Cairo. Okay, so welcome back to the fifth and final instalment of Coming Out the Other Side, One Size Does Not Fit All. What an interesting journey it's been over the past month. We began our series of workshops when we were deep into lockdown with little clarity about when those restrictions would be relaxed. Organisations were grappling with the challenges of setting up a remote workforce, social distancing, changes to trading laws and where we would find toilet paper. Now at the end of May, a little normality is starting to emerge. Over the past 4 workshops, we've taken you through the ABCW 4-step framework for mastering your new normal. Firstly, we started by setting a benchmark, establishing a picture of where our organisations were prior to the pandemic kicking in. We researched impacts of lockdown on our organisations, on our markets, and in particular on our staff. We then took some time to evaluate those impacts, establish the learnings, and identify ideas to explore and actions to take forward. Last week, we brought everything together and established a plan of action for the journey ahead. This week, we are taking a look at some of the communications and change strategies that will underpin the action plans that we've created. We will then wrap up our series of workshops with a final activity. And so now back to you, Cairo.
So in this last session, we're going to share a couple of tools to help you manage the actual move to your new normal. As with everything throughout this framework, the tools draw on the work that we have carried out or you have carried out to date and the outcomes that you've arrived at along the way. The tools are designed to be practical and easy for you to use, and they have absolutely passed our ABCW No BS-ometer. The focus at this point is on communicating. So it's all about letting people know that change is coming. The job right now is to start to wake people up to the new normal, to begin showing them the shape of change and of course getting people involved. So change response is all about ensuring a coordinated effort across many different lines of business. This involves identifying the people who need to be involved and getting them involved. It's about having a clear direction and goals and coordinating everyone to reach that destination together. As someone creating change plans to respond to the change, you don't need detailed, intricate knowledge of the various business areas or processes involved. You just need to uncover the right person or people who have that knowledge and get them engaged. So we have 3 tools that we're going to go through today. In order to start, at the last step, we gave you a solid set of internal and external boundaries. We're going to use these as the basis for your change plans. This will give you a stable and reusable framework. With so many unknowns, our focus is on that solid foundation for decision making. This includes proper data and information to inform that decision making. This comes from all the research and the material that you've gathered together through the previous stages. This approach provides a considered and proactive approach, and at the same time allows for the flexibility that we believe we're all going to need as we move forward. Using this framework, you'll find it easy to model and prepare for a number of different scenarios. We take the initial strategic boundaries of business, internal strategic boundaries, which are the business model, financial, risk, and workforce, and we also look at the external ones, government compliance and regulations, economic, market, and customer, and we use these as a scaffold. Before we get into the actual body of the response plan, there's a little bit of upfront stuff that needs to be done. We need to put down the purpose and the scope of the document and some things like that. So the purpose just is a high-level positioning statement with some bullet points as to what you're going to do. What are the goals around this, such as identifying and analysing stakeholder group? What's the awareness of people of the current state, and why are we doing this, and highlight the impact on staff for working patterns. Also, we need a couple of 5 or 6 overarching strategies. Again, these are just high level, so they could be things like seeking support from senior leaders or providing specific targeted support for process owners. Finally, what are the timeframes that planning is going to cover? So we like to do these things in sprints. As humans, we like things to be quite neat and orderly, so a 30, a 60 or a 90-day sprint are the right timeframes. Look at those in terms of your business and choose which one is realistic and best for you. 30 days can go by pretty quickly, I have to say. And then finally, in terms of plans, and we're going to have a bit of a look at this today, we need to identify the immediate activity and put in place the high-level immediate plans for each step. So I've done one here, which is a workforce example. I've chosen this one. So at the top, you'll see it's got a bit of a description. So the workforce encapsulates our internal staff, but also extends to consider the new habits or workforces of our suppliers, partners, and possibly also our customers. Some things we might need to consider here. Have the working hours changed to people that we're working with? Are people working from home? So we might need to pull this into our workforce considerations. So the kinds of things that you would have here is you'd have one under flexible working perhaps. So the subheading for that is we want to establish the best ways to engage the business. We're going to do this through one-on-ones with key areas that we've already identified in our plans. We're going to conduct leader and influencer sessions to showcase the new working model, etc. And we're going to do some business continuity planning. So this obviously looks great on this beautiful slide. In reality, this is probably what your document will look like. So it'll just be a series of bullet points working through each of those areas. And after the session, we have all these resources up on our blog, so you can go there and have a look at them and get some help getting started with this. The next thing we need to do is start communicating to our stakeholders. So what we need to do here is just establish, first of all, who we're talking to on the left-hand side, so the board, executive leadership, HR, etc., all those groups that we're actually talking to, their status or their awareness. So for the board example here, they're removed from the frontline sentiment and the operational reality of staff, and they're hooked into shareholders' needs. So these give us both areas of which to focus our communications and also opportunities to leverage influence and to get more information to feed into our plans. Then we need to look at the key messages. So what are we doing, why, how, and for whom? So we need your support. So this is the message to the board, to bring the shareholder reality to life for staff so that they understand what's happening and to position our choices favourably with the media. Then the other things we might look at is compliance, why we must do this, organisational benefit, the role of the project and lead team, so it's clear about who's involved in this, who's driving this and what their role is. And then I'm a fan of outcomes and measures. So we're looking at short-term measures to help keep us on track. So we might know that we're doing a good job with the board because our funding is being approved, because they're coming along to the briefings that we're putting together. They're asking questions, they're engaged, and they're signing off the work. So outcomes and measures are about the outcomes and measures for success of our communications plan. The next step is to take this and turn it into a set of actions. So it's pretty straightforward. Again, we know who we're talking to. What's the goal? We want to create awareness of the work being undertaken, ratify and prioritise the work, and how are we going to do it? So we're going to do it with the board through ad hoc presentations and board meeting presentations, but it could equally be one-on-one meetings, a series of presentations, participating in professional forums. There could be capability building sessions, government sessions, Teams channels, and so on. And then when are we going to communicate, and what's the frequency, and where are we up to? So is this underway, or is it not yet? Is it coming soon? And then finally, we're not covering this off here just in terms of time, but we also then want to look at tracking our overall success. So we're going to give you some key questions to help you track success against your actions. We want this again to be not a big thing. It's not to overbake it. Your business areas will be doing all of that detailed sales tracking and everything else. We just want to have a quick look at the success measures moving forward.
Okay. Thanks, Cairo. It's been and continues to be a time of great uncertainty. There's no rule book to tell us what's going to happen or how to deal with it. And while there's now some relaxing of lockdown restrictions, the impacts continue. For some organisations, the reverberations from COVID-19 are only just beginning, while for others, the impacts may not be clear until well into next year. And that's assuming there are no further lockdowns. We've heard success stories where businesses have managed to pivot. Think high-end restaurants doing home delivery, gin distillers making hand sanitizer, or nearly every organisation transitioning their workforce to a working from home model. But along with the positives, we're starting to hear the casualties. Virgin Australia, Hertz in the US, and many retail brands, with more to follow, unfortunately. How can organisations be flexible enough or adaptive enough to deal with all this uncertainty? Well, there's no silver bullet. We would like to remind you of a well-known management tool that's been around for a number of years that we think actually is quite useful for these times, and certainly suitable for the final activity in our framework. And that tool is scenario planning. Now, I'm sure many of you will be familiar with the Peter Schwartz book, The Art of the Long View, a seminal book that kicked off a lot of writing about scenario planning. In the current situation, it's difficult to not just be reactive. Scenario planning helps us to try and be more proactive. It helps us to take a long view during uncertainty and get us thinking about what the different roads are that we could take. It's not about predicting the future. Rather, it's an exercise in looking at the different directions that the future might take and exploring what that means for the organisation and what is required to adapt. Now, in the current situation, when we talk about the future, we literally mean next week or next month or next year. Yes, it's great to still think 5 to 10 years out, but at the moment, our future is critical right now. So, excuse me, scenario planning is about asking what if for the organisation. What if there is another lockdown? What if our supply chain collapses? What if our export markets bring in new tariffs? How will we handle that? Do we have the right capabilities, partnerships, and workforce strategies in place? This sort of planning focuses or forces us to be observant to trends and to the many changes that are occurring. What would you do if you're one of those organisations that has decided that post-lockdown, all staff must resume working from home? But then the government brings in working from home as a legal right, as exists currently in Finland and is being considered in Germany. How would you handle that? How would you handle a disruption to your supply chain? You might be like BHP, who've decided they rely so heavily on their supply partners to remain operational that they've agreed to support them financially throughout this period. So there are various versions of scenario planning. The infographic that you'll see here is a 4-step version. And it involves identifying the driving forces or the big shifts in the regulations, in the economy, society, and technology that are likely to impact you. It's then about selecting 2 or 3 that are likely to have the most impact on your business. And that might be rising prices, changes in customer demand, or totally new trading rules. You then design the scenarios that cover those drivers and describe what the situation would be like for those scenarios to be realised. And then finally, it's about workshopping the implications of those scenarios, exploring your readiness and capabilities to handle them. It won't solve all your problems, but you will be prepared with some creative strategies to handle what might come next, and we don't know what that will be. So at this point, I'm now going to hand you back to Cairo to wrap up.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the ABCW 4-step model for mastering the new normal. In putting this model together, we really didn't want to reinvent the wheel. Rather, our goal has been to package up a number of tried and tested tools, but to also couch them against the background of the COVID-19 crisis and the pandemic to give you structure and to help you navigate your way through this period and beyond. There are a lot of resources that we've put together over the month to help you make this happen. So the self-service stuff is all up on our blog and it's ready to go. So all of the fabulous videos that have been recorded as part of M365 May are there, and all of the tools and support material. So everything you need for a do-it-yourself move is there at the moment. We also have a consulting pack. So it's a special discounted offer. This is the weirdest end of financial year ever, and we've responded to that by putting together a special pack. We are also writing an ebook, which will be out next month. So at the moment, it's not available. It's more detailed than the self-serve offering on our site, but it's not an actuality yet. So we have a lot of ways to get in touch. Thank you very much for everybody who has sought us out through the month and has chatted to us and asked us questions and shared their journey with us. We hope this has been useful. We've certainly enjoyed presenting, and we thank you all very much for your time.